Far too large for just me, but that does not mean I want to be sharing it with one of their resident ghosts. There's ghosts. There's lots and lots of ghosts. If I have to be, I will be scarier than any ghosts anyone has ever met. Not only that, there is a black mass blob. I want to normalise the topic of communicating with ghosts and seeing spirits. Bring on the headless ghost of Mr. Bushell, or whether you find facts about axes fun. I personally do, because I'm a little bit sadistic. I'm joking. And as you can hear, there's creaky floorboards. A lot of people have seen the body with no head. Has anyone seen the head with no body? Daily dilemma. Do we address the severed head that tried to get into bed with me last night? Good evening, it's Brocarde here, and I've found myself somehow back in Whitby. Well, it is one of the most haunted Gothic towns in the UK, and something or someone keeps drawing me back in to Whitby. Is it the vampires? Is it the ghosts? Is it the folklore? Either way, here I am again, and I'm going to be telling you a few spooky ghost stories and touching on the 5, it might not be 5, it could be 6, it could be 4, it could be 3, top haunting ghosts of Whitby. As you will see, I'm in a hotel room. I'm in Bagdale Hall, which by all accounts is one of the haunted buildings here in Whitby. It's a 17th century inn, or it was a 17th century inn. Now it's a 21st century guest house, hotel, place where people come ghost hunting and do paranormal investigations, and hopefully, or hopefully not, depending on your personal ghost preference, you may bump in to one of the hotel's resident ghosts. In my last video, I touched on the fact of why is Whitby so haunted, and why is Bagdale Hall so haunted? Well, firstly, it's one of the oldest buildings in Whitby, which means naturally, as with most of the places I go, it has a lot of history, and as such, a lot of haunted history. So there's ghosts. There's lots and lots of ghosts. But will they be visiting me in the dead of night? Only time will tell. For those of you who are interested in places to stay in Whitby, this could be right up your street. I am in a suite, as you can see, by the 4-poster bed. Love a good 4-poster bed, can't knock it. And yeah, it's rather large, which shall be interesting. Far too large for just me, but that does not mean I want to be sharing it with one of their resident ghosts, because apparently their most notorious ghost of Bagdale Hall is said to sneak into women's beds in the dead of night. Been there, done that. Not sure I want that encounter again, so I might be putting together some sort of ritual to scare off the ghosts. I will, if I have to be, I will be scarier than any ghosts anyone has ever met. You heard it here first. So, as you come into this room. This suite is room 3. I had to think then. 3. This room is room 3. And it's at the top of the staircase. And yeah, you guessed it, the staircase is also said to be haunted. Apparently, people have seen a lady in a flowing white gown moving up and down the staircase in the night. Not only that, there is a black mass blob. Slightly more concerning. I touched upon black mass blobs when I went to Nevada State Prison. And skinwalkers. Hopefully they don't have skinwalkers here. But apparently there's a big black blob that moves up the stairs. Slightly concerning. If I had the choice, I'll take the lady in the white dress. Talking of ladies in white dresses, I adore a good ghost debate. And a question that I keep bringing up lately is, do ghosts present themselves wearing what they died in? Do they present themselves wearing their very finest gown? Or do they present themselves in the way that they most like to be remembered? Now, if a ghost dies haggard, miserable, crippled with illness, age 90, do they present themselves in their former glory? Do they present themselves as a beautiful young bride when they had the happiest day of their life? It's a theory, and I don't know the definitive answer to this question, but it's an actual fascinating debate. Some people believe that ghosts can transform in appearance. And are you actually seeing the same ghost in different genres of their life? Do ghosts haunt where they died? Do ghosts haunt where they enjoyed their time? There are so many theories surrounding this, the most popular being that ghosts either haunt where they lived or where they died or where they have a close spiritual connection with. And that is totally logical. If you believe in the logic of ghosts, I want to normalise all chat about ghosts, and I want to eliminate any humour, well, not any humour. I want to normalise the topic of communicating with ghosts and seeing spirits. So stick with me on that mission and we'll see if I succeed. As I said, I'm staying in one of the hotel's suites. And I mean, it's a large room. I wouldn't necessarily call it a suite, but it has a couple of sofas, and it reminds me of a country pub, and the fireplace is very nautical. And we're in Whitby, we're by the sea. There's references to sailing boats, and it feels very in keeping with the inn. I don't know if those tiles are original or whether they are a new addition, but I like it. I like a little bit of culture. I like a little bit of inspiration taken from where you are. Kind of makes it a little bit more interesting. As I mentioned earlier, Bagdale Hall is one of the oldest buildings in Whitby. It has a blue heritage plaque outside to tell the world that it was erected in 1503. The plaque outside also notes its most famous, notorious resident, Browne Bushell. Every time I say that name, and I've said it a few times, something very, very weird happens to my body. And it's almost like his presence is already amongst us, and I can feel eyes on me when I say that. It's like I need to look up and I need to look around. So that's quite interesting. I've only been here for a very short amount of time, so I haven't seen the apparition of Browne Bushell yet, but he is one of the most notorious ghosts, and he is the ghost that most people think that they encounter when they stay at Bagdale Hall. He's the guy who supposedly jumps into bed with random strangers. Now, I don't know whether or not that's true, but this ghost already has a bit of a creepy reputation, and I cannot substantiate those rumours because my bed has not been slept in by me or by Browne Bushell. Well, actually, my bed could have been slept in by Browne Bushell, but I haven't seen him yet. For those of you who are interested in a little bit of history, as well as haunted history, why was Browne Bushell so notorious? He's quite notorious in death because his spirit seems to still be alive here. But in life, he was notorious for being a turncoat and a traitor, and he switched sides. He was very indecisive. In fact, he entered battle fronting the side that would give him the most cash. He could be persuaded to fight for anyone as long as the money was right. Also, history tells us. And what was the punishment for the crime of treason? Well, sadly, Browne Bushell met his demise by being beheaded by an axe. He was tried for his crimes of treason and met his demise by having his head chopped off. That's why people say they sometimes spot a headless ghost at Bagdale Hall. I'm here for it. Bring on the headless ghost of Mr. Bushell. It was back in 1651 that Browne Bushell was executed, and he's said to still linger within these walls. I just have a really, really weird random thought. That's kind of scary. I don't think that the black mass that people see is a black mass. I feel like it's an axe still looking for Browne Bushell, looking to execute him again, because even though he is physically dead, his memory is living on. His memory is haunting people. Well, that's really weird. Often when I sense paranormal activity, I start to sway and I start to go somewhere else and go somewhere weird. Also, there is a fun fact, or whether you find facts about axes fun. I personally do, because I'm a little bit sadistic. I'm joking. But the same axe that executed Mr. Bushell, and I'm calling him Mr. Bushell, showing my respects to the former naval officer. Hopefully that will keep me safe in the dead of night, fingers crossed. The same axe was used to execute King Charles I. So that axe was quite an active axe. And in terms of haunted objects, I wonder where it resides today. As I said, I had a really weird feeling about the black mass that moves up the stairs. I know an axe is a inanimate object, not living. But the axe is obviously moving because it is in the arms of a real ghost who used to be alive. Yep, kind of gone weird again. So we've touched on the most impacting ghosts of Bagdale Hall, but As with any haunted location, there's more subtle ghost sightings here, like a creaky door, doors opening by themselves, scarily, candles lighting themselves, which sounds a bit of a health and safety hazard to me, and as you can hear, there's creaky floorboards. So if anyone is moving around this building, and this is a hotel, there's several rooms, there's gonna be creaks and bumps in the night. It's a noisy building. It's an old building. It is going to have those sounds that are gonna be a little bit spooky in the middle of the night. But if my bedroom door flings open when I'm lying in bed, that is not going to be something that's going to be too pleasant. But I will keep my fingers crossed that that is not going to happen. I am sending positive energy to protect me in Whitby. Have you ever been to Whitby? I'm sure a lot of you watching this are either thinking of going to Whitby or you've been here before. And if so, I want to know, have you been bitten by a vampire? I really want to encounter a real vampire on my visit to Whitby. Have you been bitten by a vampire? Have you been spooked by a ghost? Have you been assaulted by Mr. Browne Bushell, the Civil War turncoat, who switched teams from the Roundheads to the Royalists, and this meant that the Royalists could take over Scarborough Castle. And when they took over Scarborough Castle, what did they do? They completely destroyed it. So there you go. That is as much of a history lesson as you're going to get from me. And I'm not a history buff, so if you have a more detailed account, which no doubt you do, I'm just providing the basics so you can piece together a little bit of a picture of the hotel's resident ghost and get an idea of his personality. He obviously wasn't very loyal. He obviously was quite money driven. He was obviously a little bit arrogant. Hopefully that doesn't upset him. But he obviously didn't really play by the rules, which I kind of like. So his reputation is preceding him even in death. So let's see how the evening progresses, whether at 3 a.m. I'm still making jokes about Mr. Bushell. As I said at the very start of this video, this is not just a video about the ghosts of Bagdale Hall. I wanted to touch on a few of the ghost stories that makes Whitby famous. One of the most haunted places, and I say most haunted, and when there's 5 locations, they can't all be the most haunted, but Whitby has 2 lighthouses. Now, one of the lighthouses on the West Pier is said to be haunted by the ghost of the former Lighthouse Keeper. This is because on a dark, stormy night, he noticed that the lighthouse wasn't working and subsequently not able to warn sailors of the harbour wall and the land. So, with waves lashing over the harbour wall, he risked his life to venture back into the lighthouse to climb all the way up to fix the light at the top of the lighthouse to make sure that the sailors at sea were safe. He did this heroically. He succeeded in his mission to turn on the light. However, on his way back down the stairs, because he was drenched with water and the stairs were slippery and wet, he fell and tumbled to his death all the way to the bottom of the lighthouse. People who walk along the harbour wall in the dead of night are said to see the apparition of the lighthouse keeper going up through the lighthouse, through the stairs. Some people say they even notice the light turn off on its own and mysteriously turn on by itself, breaking its normal pattern of flashing. To tell my next ghost story of Whitby, I've moved to the most nautical section of the room. Why? Because my next ghost story is about the Whitby Oyster Man. The Whitby Oyster Man used to go through the cobbled streets of Whitby saying, "Oysters, alive, alive-o." He was trying to sell his catch to anyone who wanted to buy it. He would go up and down the streets day and night trying to sell his wares, or trying to sell what he had caught in his fishing boat. One day he was heckled by a man and he got into an altercation. He got into a scuffle, and this man grabbed his basket of oysters and threw them into the pub fire. Throwing his oysters into the pub fireplace really didn't sit well with the Oyster Man. It is said that he grabbed the man who was abusing him and heckling him, and he pulled out the knife that he uses to open the oysters, and he stabbed him with it. The man died on the pavement outside the pub. But it's not the man who was killed that still haunts this pub in Whitby. It's the ghost of the Oyster Man. It's said that he is so guilty with his crimes that he's condemned himself in the afterlife to walk through the streets of Whitby, still calling out, still crying, "Oysters, alive, alive, oh." So if you're walking through the cobbled streets of Whitby after dark, you can hear the sea lashing at the harbour wall. Pause for a moment. See if you can hear the cries of the Whitby Oyster Man. For those of you who watched my other video on Whitby, you will notice that I told the story of the phantom coach. Now this ghost is attached to the iconic St Mary's churchyard and Whitby Abbey. A lot of people say that they notice coach and horses moving through Whitby churchyard and then disappearing. But what is equally creepy about this phantom coach is that the horses are headless. Now what a fascinating sight that would be to behold. Not only do we have headless Mr. Browne Bushell lurking around Bagdale Hall, we have a whole coach with headless horses roaming around St Mary's Church. Now, there are a lot of severed heads in Whitby. Now, headless coach, headless horses. Of course it's a headless coach, it's a coach. Headless horses pulling a coach. But what about if you just saw a floating horse head? Or Mr. Bushell's floating head? A lot of people have seen the body with no head. Has anyone seen the head with no body? Now that would be terrifying. Imagine lying there in the dead of night in this glorious four-poster bed, being awoken to a head. Just a head floating. "Hi, can I get into bed with you?" No, funnily enough, no, you can't. So a head with no body would definitely be another level of ghost for me. And I would definitely be flying down those stairs. Whether the stairs are haunted or not, I would be running away from the head with no body. Does the head exist without the body? I just had a really, really strange vision of the headless ghost and the head meeting. Hold that thought. So Whitby ghost stories already there's quite a lot of ghosts. We've got headless horses. We've got headless men. Potential heads of horses and of ghost men. We have women in white that haunt the staircase. We have black mass blobs that are potentially moving axes in the hands of a spirit. And now I'm going to tell you the tale of the Ghost of Grape Lane. Now this is a story of a ghost child. A young girl was making her way to a bakery on Grape Lane. She was asking the baker to heat her father's dinner. Now, you imagine those big baking furnaces that they had back in the day. This wasn't a small, safety-compliant oven. So she went in. She knew the baker really well. He entrusted her to go and put the plate in the oven herself. I guess you know what's going to happen next. The young girl apparently fell into the flames and burned to death. Many people believe that they can hear the cries of this little girl on Grape Lane, crying out, crying as she burst into flames and met her end. Now that's quite an upsetting ghost story, and ghosts of children are particularly sad for obvious reasons because they die far earlier than intended. They die in quite innocent circumstances. And actually, Bagdale Hall is said to have a few ghosts of children itself. Some people say that there are children that run around the halls laughing, giggling, and having conversations in the dead of night. There's lots of stories like this: disembodied voices, conversations from other eras, conversations about things that are no longer relevant in 2024. So there's certainly a wealth of history. And I have one more ghost story from Whitby to tell you. My final ghost story of Whitby, apart from my own ghost stories that could occur later, is the story of the old landlady of the White Horse and Griffin. This story dates back to the 19th century. Apparently this lady was a very cruel lady. In 2024, we have a name for this type of woman. Be it politically correct or not, it rhymes with witch. So this lady was a bit of a... And every person that walked into the pub, she would judge them. She would be cruel to them. She would be mean to them. She was just not a very nice person by all accounts. So, be it fate, be it whatever, this lady, who was supposedly quite nasty and quite evil, died outside the pub. She slipped late one evening and cracked her head on the cobbles. She died a death, slowly and alone in the middle of the pavement. Some people say that when they go into the pub, they still feel her eyes peering through them, judging them, making them feel uncomfortable, because regardless of whether or not she passed away on that evening all alone on the pavement, it's believed that her evil, judgmental spirit still lives on, still torments people, still haunts the customers of the pub. Good morning. I survived the night. Daily dilemma. Do we address the severed head that tried to get into bed with me last night? I'm gonna choose to ignore that. I hope you've enjoyed watching my brief video of the ghost stories of Whitby and Bagdale Hall. If you enjoyed this one, there will be something equally as spooky coming very, very soon. I love making these videos, and on this occasion I decided not to go into full ghost hunter mode. I know a lot of people walk around with, in my opinion, these ridiculous devices that supposedly communicate with ghosts, and I prefer just to see what I can see and communicate with spirits in the way that I do and share my personal experiences with you. I wish I'd have actually bought my dowsing rods, because that would have been a fun one to do here. But follow, like, subscribe, and if you've been to Whitby, did you see Dracula? Comment below, share your stories. I always love to hear spooky tales from other realms and beyond the grave. Bye.